Good morning, Dad School Podcast. How you doing, Jimmy?
I'm good now that we figured out the technologies. We won the
Yes,
day.
we won today. Apparently, Facebook's like, no, you can't go live today. Everything else was like, sure, you can go live, but Facebook's like, no. And I'm not going to give you an error message either, just to say no. Anywho,
No,
we fixed this. If you're listening on Facebook, I don't know how because it's not streaming to Facebook right now, but it's on YouTube and we will get uploaded to all the accounts and places and things. Anywho, we're dadschoolpodcast.com. I'm Josh. This is Jimmy. We have, as Jimmy, what did you say earlier? We have 6
we
pages
won
to
the
get
day.
through, 5 pages to go through
Oh
today.
yeah,
So let's get started.
we got the content.
Let's not have Jimmy hold us up today.
I'll do my best.
All right. Before we get started, any updates, Jimmy? Any personal, intimate updates in your life you want to share with everybody? If not, it's okay.
I had a cup of coffee, and I'm doing great.
That's good. Nice, nice and easy, simple, non-committing intro. I like it. Okay.
Yep.
So the topic today, drum roll in the background. Your kids and lying. Okay. I usually don't do a show without something personal pushing the topic. And this past week it was a bout of lying in our household. And it got me thinking about, as dads, what can we be doing to address lying or fibbing or not telling the truth, telling tall tales, anything and everything your kid will do to try to get out of being in trouble for the lie that they're caught in, you know? And most of the time, I don't know, people, even if your kid says they're sorry, or even if they don't say they're sorry, they're upset that they got caught in the lie. And there's some things behind that we got to talk about. So let me start off with my own personal story with this. Wasn't me lying. I have lied in the past. Everyone lies. If you say you never lie, you're lying. But I had my youngest kid. It was a very it was like the most. This is the weirdest setup ever. Right? We're all sitting around the table. We're getting ready for dinner. Like we're quite literally just wrangled the troops up from off their video games, and they're coming to sit at the table. The way we sit at our table is twin number 1, youngest son, twin number 2, wife, me, oldest son. That's like our standard order. In the past, we've had different orders, but this is the one we've been at for well over probably a year and a half, 2 years. Well, I wasn't in the room. My wife wasn't in the room, but the 2 twins were, and so was my youngest. My oldest was not. And even I heard a smack. I heard a smack of hand on flesh. Not sure whose hand on whose flesh, but I wish I knew because it would have made this whole thing a lot easier. But my wife was out of the room as well. We heard some screaming, heard a little arguing, and then someone was mad they got hit. And we had denial. So allegedly what happened was my oldest twin and my youngest son were having words, and it wasn't over anything special. They're just talking, I think, and one didn't like the way the other one talked about something or made a sound or made fun of him or whatever, fill in the blank. And my youngest smacked my oldest twin and then said he didn't and said that she hit him. And it might sound like, oh, this is like a daily occurrence for some people in their household, which I get. Sometimes, yes, it's like, okay, don't put your hands on each other. But here's the problem. And we had to address this because you can't just let this kind of things go talked about, unaddressed. He said, she hit me. And the other one said, I did not hit him. He hit me. So there was a difference of opinions. And then twin number 2, she's like, I saw the whole thing. She didn't hit him. He hit her. And we're like, okay. So we have confirmation from the 2 the 2 older twins. And I'm like, first of all, going through all those scenarios, like, are they colluding against him? Do they have it out for him? Trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but he is adamant that he was wrong and he did not get. He did not hit. He hit. He was hit by somebody else. And my girls have been through this. Like they know the punishment of lying. Now, I'm not saying my girls or my oldest are by any means perfect or free from lying. I think we've progressed with them to the stage where if they do lie about something, they it's a big issue, and they know that. We've been through this exercise of lost privileges, of sitting down for endless, minutes and hours in their life, talking through the importance of why you don't lie. You know, what if there is something that you're lying about? The whole house burned down, everyone died. And it's because you lied. We couldn't trust you. Because we thought we could trust you, but you're lying about something. You know, not trying to like damage my kids, but it's important that they understand the importance behind why you tell the truth. Like the trust has to be there. And if you are lying about something small, why wouldn't you lie about something big? You know?
Yeah.
Well, that's the setup here. In the end, we kind of knew he was lying, but the problem is like you can go one of many ways, I guess. You can just punish him and say, "I know you're lying," and that's it, and move forward, right? And that's probably the way I would have handled it. Thank goodness my wife's in our lives because she has a lot different way to handle things like this, and I like the way she handled it. She wanted him to come to us and basically admit, yes, I lied. So we started by blanketing the situation equally, saying, okay, one of you two is not telling the truth. We kind of just discounted the younger twin that saw everything because she wasn't directly involved, so we just discounted it. And when she didn't like that, I offered to have the same punishment for her too, and she quickly walked away. But we said, okay, no electronics for either of you guys until we hear the truth.
Ooh.
Figure out the truth and come to us, and the truth shall set you free. And obviously the older twin was like, this is not fair. She kind of just accepted it, like I didn't hit him and it's on him. So he had after dinner, gonna let it sit for a bit. After dinner we re-engaged because that's when he realized he can't be on electronics. He's like, oh, this is real. And this is actually gonna affect me. And we had some words with him and had to sit down, and eventually he came out to us telling us, yes, she might have tapped me on the arm. She didn't hit me. She tapped me. I didn't like that, and it really upset me. So we made sure that he was able to tell her, "Hey, when you tapped my arm, it really upset me." And then we're like, "You have anything to say to him?" And she's like, "When you smacked me, I didn't like that either."
How
So,
about that?
yeah, how about them apples? And he said sorry, and we moved on. But then here's the thing: like it was over, and as a parent who has other things in life to do other than coddle your kids on a simple matter like this, like I might like higher level looking at it at the moment, I'm like, this is way out of proportion. We're stuck on this too long. Punish them and move on. That was my whole thing. But after really thinking about it and seeing how my wife handled it, I was like, yeah, that was a lot better way she did it because it made him own up to what he was doing. He had to make things right. And there's still a consequence. And we weren't like pushover parents of, okay, go play with your devices now instead of our hair. It was, yeah, this sucks. Yeah, you're probably going to annoy me the rest of the night and tomorrow because that was the punishment of no electronics today. Actually, the final punishment was no electronics the rest of the night and tomorrow. That was the punishment he had. And it was, you would have thought that we like, were skinning him alive, how that went. He wasn't like overly crying, but he understood the weight of it because the next day he came to me several times. All I can do is Legos and reading books, and I'm bored. I'm like, should have hit your sister.
Yeah. That's what happens.
And he's just like, yeah, he got it. And
Yeah.
he's only 6. He's 6.5, almost 7. He'll be 7 in 2 months. So I mean, he's of the age that he understands these things, and the consequence was real. So That was like the world's longest intro. Jimmy, do you have any touching, deep personal stories of the similar?
One time a lie happened, and we solved it.
There you have it. Jimmy and his infinite wisdom of words, mastery of words.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean those things, little weird things come up. They happen, and what has been, I mean, kind of the way that your wife approached it. Of okay, then we're just going to kind of rope everyone into one group and trust that this is the way that this is going to work out. It's just going to, kind of suss itself out naturally.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about lies and truth is lies are always so much harder to wrangle and keep going. They take so much more mental energy to keep going. So someone who finds themselves constantly telling lies, mentally, it's so difficult keeping track
Yes.
of everything you've got floating out there. Well, I told this to this person. I told this to that person. Eventually, they out themselves, and it's especially true with children who are even further cognitively behind, and that's a fun thing. For a little while, it feels like a superpower as a parent, just knowing like eventually they're not going to be able to keep up with all the little stories that they told, and they're gonna out themselves, and just let nature run its course.
So like that's like the hardest thing for me is whenever I know that they're lying and I catch them, the hardest thing for me is not to continuously bring it up and like it sounds
Remember that.
bad when I say it this way, but like shaming them in a way. Like I like to needle my kids, right? It's just I poke the bear a lot, and it's in fun and jest, and I have to be really, really, really careful because of my personality. I'm a very sarcastic person. I know my kids are going to pick up on that. I know that I'm trying not to make them that way long term, right? So I got to be careful with it. But I do poke at them. I'm like, oh yeah, probably shouldn't have hit your sister then, or later on, like I don't know, something like just playing around with them, like, oh, I can't hit you because I don't lose electronics, something like that. It's like, oh man, you brought that up again. So I gotta be careful that once the punishment is served, I don't like bring it up in anger or hold it over their heads long term. I might bring it up as a reminder, like, oh, you don't want to do that again, do you?
Yeah.
But yeah, be careful. You don't want to make them bitter against you. That's like a fear I have, I guess, in this whole process of parenting, is that my natural joking behavior will cause them to become embittered toward me in some way that I don't see. But okay, so I'm trying to. This section here can be collapsed. I think we already covered a lot of this. Let's stab this a little bit. So biblically speaking, Jesus talks to us about the truth, setting you free. There's a famous quote, John 8:31, which he's talking to a group of Jews and Gentiles at the same time. Some people are, well, I think it's just Jews at this time, but they're talking to him, and some are believing him, some are not, and they're just talking about the texts. And at one point, he says, "So, if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and truth will set you free." Okay, and then the later verses after that, he talks about how we are a slave to our sins. Okay, he gets into detail. This is Josh's paraphrase version here, but he's talking about being a slave to your sins, and in essence, lying is a sin. Okay, tell the truth, don't lie. You just like you just talked about, when you lie, you have to keep that straight because and then keeping that straight, you're probably gonna lie again. Just keep it straight, and you keep that lie straight, and it compounds. And there's a weight on your shoulders, and this is strictly talking as an adult, 1-to-1 here. We have told lies in the past, and we have felt that weight on our shoulders. Imagine our kids who are, exploring new things, new feelings, and now they have this heavy weight on their shoulders of a lie they told their parents. And whether we make it apparent to them or not that we know they're lying, it's still a weight on their shoulders, and it's something that we have to help them unburden themselves from. Like they have to learn the tactics, learn the signs, learn like it's okay to tell the truth after a lie. It's not okay to lie, and sometimes, but once your kid's already in that downward spiral, as parents, it's best that we come up with ways to not shame them, punish them more. We have to actually praise them for coming out of the lie. That is part of our jobs. We have to help guide them to make the right choices, and hopefully we see the lie and we can help them do this. It's terrible when parents are lied to by their kids and they just believe it blindly and they don't question things, and it ends up hurting things way down the line. But I'm getting off track a little here. So Jesus was saying the sins are binding to us. They're heavy, and by not sinning, by telling the truth, you'll be freed from those sins. That's what basically he's saying in that passage.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're teaching our kids about truth, we're showing our kids the freedom and being more Christ-like. We're showing them the freedom of not having that burden on our shoulders, not having that sin in our lives, and to combat that sin. And and with every sin that we learn, we know about. No, that's a weird way to say that. With every sin that we experience, we know as a Christian that we can repent of those sins, which means forgiveness, which means forgiveness from Christ, yes, but not forgiveness from the consequences of that sin. So your kids have to understand that yes, they might have been caught in a lie. Yes, they might have apologized, but there's still consequences to those lies and those sins. And hopefully, we can come up with a way as parents to show them the consequences without, which by showing the consequences and having to live out the consequences, they'll remember next time why they should not lie and come out clean in the beginning and just tell the truth no matter what the consequences might be of their actions. But do it in a way that's loving and not mean. Do it in a spiritual correction way, not in a vindictive I'm master, you're slave, you're my child, obey me kind of way.
There's like this intertwining that you're trying to get right down the middle, this sweet spot of if you're caught in lies, or if that's what you're particularly dealing with at the moment, you're carrying these lies, and as you were putting it, there's that burden of, okay, now I'm stuck in this lie, I have to keep telling this lie over and over and over again. It becomes this heavy burden. So finding that magic middle intertwined place of, okay, so you've now come to a spot where you can tell the truth and get that burden off your shoulders, and doesn't that feel better? Don't you feel that relief of getting that burden off your shoulders and helping your kid to see the relief of telling the truth in that moment? But then in the same moment, and then here's the consequence for the lie you were telling. There's still going to be a consequence. There's going to be a punishment that comes along with it. So you want them to recognize and acknowledge that relief of the burden of being relieved of that lie, because that's a super powerful experience of, okay, yeah, truth is so much better whenever I can get that off my chest. Yeah, that feels great. I'm not carrying that burden anymore. But then, okay, we still got to deal with, hey, you messed up and we got to take care of that. And so coming down too hard on the consequence can overshadow that relief of the burden. But then if you only just, oh, thanks for telling the truth. Okay, good deal. And there's no other consequence with it, then you can inadvertently create someone who's like, oh, well, that's all. I can carry a lie for a while, and then when I'm ready, drop it off, and there's no consequence. Well, this is easy. I'll just do this all the time. So trying to find that middle ground.
Yeah, that's something my wife does very well. Is she recognizes that dichotomy there, and she mentions that several times in the process of trying to get them, one to confess on their own terms, but also at the end, after everything's out in the open, she brings it back up saying, hey, in the future, if you just say, hey, I hit her and I'm sorry, it was wrong, and we move past it, there have been no consequence at all at that
Moved
point.
on. Yeah.
There have been absolutely no, you didn't lie and you owned up to laying hands on somebody else. That happens a daily hourly occurrence in our house almost, of laying hands on each other, and you shouldn't. And it's something we're working on, but it's not the big issue. And we make that very apparent that the lie is the reason that there's consequence on this. I mean, that's not always going to be the case, obviously, depending on what they do. But in this one, like, she's very good at explaining, this is so much worse for you right now because you chose to lie blatantly.
Right.
So the root of that lie, where does lying come from? And biblically, we're told Jesus calls Satan the father of lies. Okay, so when you have that kind of tie into to reality of our Lord is actually saying that all lies come from Satan, the devil, the dark side. I mean, that's pretty heavy, and that's a serious thing you got to deal with. Deception has a spiritual source. It's not something that's just like, oh well, it's just a lie, it's okay. It's actually against God. It's the opposite of truth. It is a lie, you know. So with that in mind, is this a behavioral correction, or is it a spiritual correction? Because if your kid goes around thinking, oh, I, like you just said, I can lie and get away with it, and then, you know, but it's really repenting, and it's deeper, and you're going against God's character in order to lie to somebody. And that's like, I don't know about anybody else out there, but you don't usually want to go against God's character. Doesn't end up well for anybody in the Bible when they do that.
Right.
So we're not just correcting lies. We're helping our kids recognize that they need to align more with God and more with the truth, and not with the father of lies. So it's a good way that you can, as a parent, you can come down to a different level with them and explain to them why lying is so bad. Like, I have my ways of, you know, trying to guilt trip them into emotionally understanding why I can't trust them. And your kids want you to trust them. That's another thing. They want, you know, I don't know of any kids out there that's like, maybe teenagers, but in the inside, they don't feel this way. They're like, I don't care if you don't trust me, you know. But in reality, your kid wants to be trusted. They want to have that connection with their parent. And this is all obviously saying that you guys have a relationship with your kids, that this is happening. If your relationship with your kids is struggling, you're going to have other issues you're fighting alongside these issues. But understanding the core of these issues is sin, well, it might help you out a little bit, actually. Like, you might, instead of them doing a lie or a action against you, and you taking it personally that you are being attacked by them because they hate you or something, it's different context to think about this as, my kid is actually having a sin problem, and that's what I need to help them address. Not, my kid is trying to be mean and hates me. And as a Christian dad, I can probably attack that a little differently than if I was just being defensive because I thought they were doing something against me or taking it personally.
I mean, it's like when you're working with your kids on this sort of thing, it's like tending a garden. That if you've got a bunch of weeds growing up and all you're doing is going through and just ripping off the leaves, or just what's, you know, an inch above the soil, and you're just kind of ripping the tops off the weeds, like, it doesn't take long and they're right back. You got to get to the root of what's going on. So what was going on with your kid in their mind in that moment of, okay, in the split second decision of, I'm going to deal with this truthfully, or I'm going to spin a yarn and I'm going to go this direction. What was going on in their mental algebra of, okay, I'm going to go this way. And, you know, oftentimes it's rooted in, there's already embarrassment or shame of a prior mistake that they already have made. And so I'm going to try to cover it up. I don't want to be caught in this other mistake that I've already made. So now I'm going to lie to try to cover it up. Or maybe they see a benefit that someone else is having, like a reward for completing a task or something. And well, I also want reward. So I'm going to try to, you know, make myself look good. I'm going to butter up my parents, you know, make them think more highly than I've actually achieved or whatever. There's always some sort of root. And so you got to get down into the detail and figure out, okay, what's really going on down here, and and helping your child link to, okay, this, what was the why of why we ended up going down that road of telling that lie, and then trying to circle back with that knowledge after you can get to it. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what was going on, but as often as you can, when you can get down to the whole why behind whatever happened, then progressing forward is a lot simpler and easier.
Yeah, and it's a good point. Like thinking back in my own childhood, the reasons I might have lied were, first and foremost, I didn't want to get in trouble for something, you know, and then embarrassment was another good reason. Like I didn't want to feel stupid or embarrassed that I did fill in the blank, so I
Yeah.
lied about it. So I'm covering that, so I don't want to be embarrassed. And now the bigger problem is not only am I embarrassed about what I'm lying about, but I'm also embarrassed I'm lying. So to be
Yeah.
found out and
Right.
called out about lying, now it's also another embarrassing act on top of everything. So yes, understanding the root is a very important strategy in how to deal with your kid emotionally through this whole process as well. Because there's reasons why, and addressing the action of lying is the biggest problem in my opinion, depending on what they did. Like crash your car and someone died, yes, that's even bigger problem. But lying about it, there's compounding issues and loss of life taken out of the equation. Most
Yeah.
things, lie is the bigger issue, so you gotta understand the why behind it. So as a dad, we've talked about this several times. Being present is like the first and foremost in your kid's life, right? You have to be present, and the act of being present puts you front and center for your kid to watch you. And that's like the key here is, how do you as a dad deal with lying in your own life? Like, do you ever tell white lies, quote unquote, that your kids or anybody else around you can definitely see through? Is it a common act for you to default to not telling the truth, even in a joking manner? You know, do your kids see that? Are they learning this from you? Are you
Mm.
constantly um, trying to cover your own mistakes or your own um, lacking abilities by lying about something? Your kids will pick up on that if you are. And that is where, people are like, I don't know where they get it from. And it's like, it's all your fault pretty much at the time. So you gotta be careful
Yeah.
how you're acting around your kids, what you're saying, what you're not saying. And when you are, if you do find yourself in a lie or someone does, you're called out somehow, or even if you realize it yourself, how you respond to that will go like the distance with your kid's life. Like they need to see you come back and be like, "Hey, I wasn't honest about that earlier. That was wrong. I'm sorry." That's a hard thing to do in the moment, but as dads, it's the best thing we can do. Right now for our kids is when we recognize something that we might have not truthfully represented, we need to make sure we're calling ourselves out, because that'll help model to our kids, this is how you should act. They're watching us.
Yeah. They're always anything that's ever going on in our life, anything that we are doing, we are teaching our kids. And whether we're actually having a one-on-one face-to-face conversation or with them, or we're off doing something with someone else and our kids are present and observing, they are being taught by us. And so being mindful of what we're modeling for our kids, absolutely. So if we find ourselves that we are the perpetrator of that sort of sin of trying to cover your tracks with a lie, or feeling shame and like, oh, if I just kind of spin it a little more positive to make myself not feel so bad about whatever mistake I already made, or whatever's going on. um, when you get found out on that, do you model that proper behavior of going to your spouse, going to your kid and saying, hey, you know what, I messed up and I was embarrassed already, and I tried to cover my embarrassment or whatever was going on, and tried to to spin a story to make myself feel better, thought that I was somehow going to shield your emotions and protect you by, telling this lie. And obviously that wasn't what was best. So, can you forgive me? And being able to model that behavior as well. Just like I said, they're always learning. Whatever you are doing, you are teaching. And these are some of the most important moments that we need to be ready to tackle as a dad, is when we ourselves are the ones who have offended, we have screwed up, we've made a mistake. Do we own up to it? And do we model that behavior for our kids?
Right. And James 5:16 tells us, therefore confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. It's like we've been talking about. This is a spiritual issue of addressing sin. And as a parent, we need to not only in our lives address these issues too. We're all sinners. We're all not perfect. And that's going to happen, whether you want to or not. It's going to happen. So when it does happen, you need to take that second to address it with your kid. And when you are addressing it with your kid, when they finally come around, hopefully they do. I'm not saying it's as easy as my situation, which was, a couple hours worth of talking on and off with him and having conversations and stopping what I wanted to do to sit down with my wife and my youngest to work through this. But when they finally do get through this, thanking them for telling the truth, like rewarding the courage it took to do that, and making sure they know that it's hard to do this. It's very hard. It took a lot of courage, and you need to be honest about that with them and make them understand that was a stronger and better thing to do than to hold on to that lie. And it just goes a long way for the next time for them, because it's going to happen again. It's not going to be like one and done. Kids are going to lie, parents are going to lie, adults are going to lie, everyone lies. And it's not fun to deal with, but how you deal with it will smooth the way for next time. Make it easier. They might be like only a half hour arguing instead of an hour plus arguing about not lying. It can work itself down because they understand the importance behind telling the truth. And you need to focus on repairing that relationship. You made things right. You talked about it. You handled it in a nice way. You're not demeaning to your kid. You're teaching them the importance of telling the truth, and it's a lesson in spiritual maturity instead of a lesson in dad or mom is right and you are wrong, and a little lying kid. You don't want your kid to think that, because that's not the truth. Yes, they might have lied at that moment, but they are not a terrible person for that lie. What's the adage? Hate the sin, not the sinner. That goes hand over foot in this situation, right? You're not supposed to be mad at your kid and hate them or be more upset with them because of the sin they're living in. You need to recognize the sin and you need to help them through that. And then,
or we don't want to accidentally communicate to them that, in our heart, like I don't hate them and I do love them, but we don't want to accidentally communicate to them that is what they're supposed to take away from the
correct
communication that we have with them.
So the next part we kind of already touched about, exposing the root of why they're lying, not being in trouble, what they're trying to protect. I think we've actually covered most angles of this, Jimmy. We have expertly dissected the spirit of the lie in under 1 hour. I'm not lying. Okay, we have done the best of our abilities in the time allotted. But so what can our vast amount of followers, what can they do this week, Jimmy? What can they do? Now, don't lie to them. Yeah. What can they do? What's the challenge you give them?
I think whenever things are going on with your kids and you need to just take that moment, just in that moment, take a deep breath. Think through, okay, what's going on? What do I have visibility on? What do I not have visibility on? And think before you act as a parent. And before you step in that gap, just kind of take a deep breath, observe, Like, okay, we're going to be going forward in some way, some fashion, and don't explode. The better that you can handle yourself in the long run, it's going to have pay dividends on the outcome of dealing with whatever situation you're dealing with.
You know, Jimmy, I'm seeing a theme with our challenges. A lot of it starts with don't react right away. As a dad, take a pause. And most of the time that's followed up with take a chill pill. And it's interesting that the theme I'm seeing constantly, and it's very true, that if I respond immediately to whatever I'm seeing, you know, I will most likely respond out of emotion and not logic. And taking a second to think through things, and probably a good exercise for anybody is to not respond right away. And not saying like ignore or take like a day or a week off to solve something, but I'm saying like don't initially respond with your gut reaction. Evaluate that gut reaction, put it against scripture, put it against your moral compass, and see, is this the right response? Because a lot of times it's not. Why am I upset? What am I? Is my response to fill in the blank? Is this to make me happy, or is this to actually solve the problem and teach someone something and guide them? And that's like kind of the overarching theme of of us as dads responding. We need to pause and evaluate instead of act and react in anger, because that's what a lot of times if I act or react, it's going to be out of anger. Now, I've caught myself like very early on in my oldest son's existence. I've caught myself with the flicking, or the just like the tap, the hard tap on the butt. Not, I didn't openly smack him, but like realizing that was just for myself. It had nothing to do with correcting an action. It was, and I claimed it was to get attention. But it was like, I'm annoyed at you. It was one of those. I'm like, I don't need to do this anymore, because like that's not solving. That's not helping. That's just my kid flinches when I come at him like this now. you know. So I need to find a different way to react. And the same thing with my words and how I act with things. If I'm always just immediately go to room, or lose his privilege, that's not helping them. That's showing my kids that dad reacts poorly to conflict. And they should not have conflict because of that. That's not teaching them that they did something wrong and we should come together and figure it out and walk through it together. So yeah, but sorry to go off that again. You're right.
All good.
Pause is the key, and then the challenge is to think things through and figure out a way to come alongside your kid and help them spiritually through their sin, instead of shaming them for it and just responding like that. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm done.
Easier said than done sometimes.
We solved the world's problems in 38 minutes. I don't know what else we're gonna do today, Jimmy. We should probably take the rest of the day off.
Hey, now that I have permission.
Yeah. All right. As always, if you found this helpful or not helpful, either way, please like and subscribe. You should always subscribe to things you find not helpful, and ours is no exception to that. If you're a mom, like our demographics show that moms and women watch our show more than dads, share it with your husband so we can help flip those stats. We'd love to see different stats. But yeah, dadschoolpodcast.com, fill out a form, say hi to us, tell us about what's going on in your life, and we will see you next week. Closing thoughts, Jimmy?
Be present.
Be present. There you go. All right. Take care, guys.